but fell into that millennials are all soft cocks. How can you say that they can be trusted? Hello everyone. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be looking at the R Open Aussie forum, and it's going to be why people are radicalized into the far right. But before we get into that, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's get straight into it. The title is, what the hell are we meant to do with the amount of seemingly normal people getting radicalized into far-right nonsense? I don't want to turn into the US. Okay, well, funny how everything is only in reference to the US when it comes to the far right, but yeah. Okay, let's begin. While I'm very on the left, I have plenty of friends who are very apolitical to conservative in the classic sense. In other words, centrists, not right-wingers, who I am more than happy to talk politics without judgment. Unfortunately, lately I've seen many of them get stuck in disinformation silos and not only become radicalized, but lose all sense of reality. Okay, but that's your opinion, man. That's your opinion. Well, let's see examples. This maybe explains further. For example, a guy I used to work with about 15 years ago, and I have remained friends. He was never overtly political, but fell into that millennials are all soft cocks blokey nonsense that many people around his age, youngish Gen X, repeated. About a year ago, I noticed him starting to post a heap of culture war stuff. Electric vehicles are for pussies. They're trying to force woke on us to turn everybody trans, etc. He wasn't specifically political, but would repeat stuff like every political party was the exact same. They kind of are the exact same if you dig deep enough into it. Continuing. We had a few chats about politics, and although I disagreed with stuff he was saying, he just seemed to be misinformed rather than coming at it from the place of real hatred of others. Fast forward to the end of last year when the anti-immigration marches were happening, I saw that a clip of these flogs organizing with NSN. He said that although he was against immigration, he thought that anybody going to these marches was a fuckwit and just supporting Nazis. Again, just misinformed. Less than a month later, he's posting 3 to 4 times a day about the Great Replacement Theory nonsense, how the country is being run by people who weren't ever born here, his evidence being some dumb boomer clickbait about female politicians who weren't born in Australia, then refusing to admit that Joyce, Lay all fall into this category. How we need public trials, or that of all politicians except Hanson, who he wants to run the country alongside Trump, and do a version of ICE raids where they remove everybody who isn't a white Christian out of the country and delete anybody who supports them. The kind of shit you've expected from a poor, dumb seppo living in the far south who grew up surrounded by racist propaganda, except he's a solidly middle-class, married, uneducated guy who himself immigrated here when he was a kid. What the fuck are we meant to do about this? I know these flogs aren't a majority, but there's a shocking amount of people who are more than willing to openly brag about this shit and refuse to consider they might be inside a disinformation bubble meant to radicalize them. Can we absolutely start with the classist language that, he's probably some poor southern slob who hears racist propaganda all day and thinks this way and this way, but then has to acknowledge that this guy's actually a middle-class, educated guy who himself immigrated to Australia at some point. This is exactly what the left are, actually. They hate the middle class and they hate the working class. They absolutely despise them at the end of the day. That is probably why they do want to replace them with immigrants, so they don't have to look at their mugs anymore. That is actually the impression you get of the left in general. They want to run the working class, they want to run the middle class, but they inherently hate them. A lot of these leftists are from these higher class backgrounds where they can't relate to your average middle class or working class person. But, I don't know, I might be reacting. Let us see what some of these comments say. And we're going to look at this particular one. The root cause, a total unregulated Wild West called social media. If social media companies had to adhere to the same standards of moderation that newspapers have to, we would be living in a utopia by comparison to the current situation. So trust the mainstream media. How many things have they lied about and had to retract because they were caught lying about something? It is absolute delusion. How can you sit there and tell us that social media, which is not run by newspaper conglomerates, by the way, has to adhere to these principles? How can you say that they can be trusted? I mean, it's unbelievable. And then this person says, social media does exacerbate things, but I think the root cause is social inequality. People who can't afford to live or are never able to get ahead, no matter how hard they work for easy answers, enter one nation and their current scapegoats. Our major parties need to help average people find a stable home, stay healthy, and put food on the table and stop helping the ultra-rich. Well, there's only one problem with that, lady. The political elites are bringing in all these immigrants for cheap labor and low pay and replacing the middle to working class that you want to help. It's counterproductive. You can't go about this situation saying, oh, well, we want to help these people, but we want to replace them. And this is what I mean. The left is inherently out of touch, especially the Western left. There is nothing more out of touch than them. Next comment. You've nailed it absolutely. Inequality is the main issue, and it only benefits the rich and powerful. So regular people are against the entire system, which is trying to divide us and control us. But you don't want the system destroyed. You're complaining about 150 gym bros of NSN who did a fucking march, okay? That is who is the biggest enemy. And anyway, they're putting in hate speech laws against where even criticism of Israel could be considered hate speech. They are targeting the regular populace. They're not going after the billionaires and all that sort of thing like you were saying. No, you guys are making, and the ones you voted for, are making laws to make certain speech impermissible. To the point where even saying a Zionist is doing wrong is going to be considered hate speech. These guys are out of touch. They do not know what they are talking about. And it's going to cost Australia very dearly in the future, and we already see that. But that's all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.